Hi folks, welcome back to the channel, and today we are going to be reviewing Bryan Singer's The Usual Suspects. The Usual Suspects is a 1995 mystery crime whodunit film directed by Bryan Singer, who actually took quite a U-turn in terms of the films that he directed. Usual Suspects was one of the first films that he ever directed. He also made Apt Pupil. But then around the 2000s, he founded his film company, Bad Hat Harry Productions, who produced Usual Suspects, Apt Pupil, and then around the 2000s, he began to produce and direct the X-Men films, and from then on, he almost exclusively started producing and directing the X-Men series. So he sort of began making sort of true crime mystery thrillers, and then just started making Marvel superhero slop. Yes, I personally am not that big of a fan of Marvel films. Not to say there aren't good Marvel films. I liked the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse animated film. That was one of the only things that I watched from Marvel that I actually liked. Godspeed to you who do like Marvel films, but as much as I've tried to get into them, they have just never interested me. Spider-Man is alright. He also directed, I think, one of the Superman films, but other than that, they're not for me. But that's a topic for another video. We're talking about this film right now. And I can actually say that The Usual Suspects is probably the best film that he ever created. As of right now, because, I don't know if you guys know this, but Bryan Singer has been accused of very not good allegations towards minors. And as of right now, I believe there's still an ongoing lawsuit. And the last thing he directed was in 2019, which was another Marvel TV show, but he's also directed the House and Legion TV series. So his filmography is really nothing to scoff at in terms of how successful his films were, and the Bad Hat Harry Productions company being created and founded by himself, that's quite a big feat. So The Usual Suspects is about a group of criminals who are all captured under the accusations that they have stolen a truck full of weapon parts that were meant to be destroyed. And later it is found out that a mysterious man, a legend, a myth as the film says, a man by the name of Kaiser Soze, or Soza, I don't exactly know. I don't remember how they pronounce it exactly, but it's Kaiser Soze. For most of the people I've spoken with, they've pronounced it as Kaiser Soze, so that's how I'll be pronouncing it. A man by the name of Kaiser Soze actually owned that truck, or it was his before the gang stole it, so they basically have to go back and give it to him, or at least that's what one of the people who work for him, Mr. Kobayashi, explained to them. And right off the bat, I want to say that this group of criminals is extremely charming and almost a goofy little gang of misfits who love to do nothing more than swear and smoke and do criminal stuff. And I'd also like to mention that a very young Giancarlo Esposito is in this film playing a Jack Bayer. So that's very fun to see, you know, all those Breaking Bad characters before they were in Breaking Bad. And he didn't even have the accent in this film, because obviously the accent that he put on in Breaking Bad was for the show itself. But in the film, he has no accent, so it's kind of weird to see it, you know, considering that most people born around the 2000s and onward may only know him for Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. Now, I do have to warn you guys that if you haven't seen this film yet, I will be going in depth into the spoilers and the plot twist of this film. So if you haven't seen the film yet, you should pause right now, go watch it. It's only an hour and 46 minutes. It's actually on YouTube for free right now. So you should go watch that before they remove it. If you haven't seen the film, you should go watch it and then come back to this review so you can hear what I have to say. And if you've already seen the film, Let's continue. So the entire second half of the film is basically the audience trying to figure out who Kaiser Soze is, and there are very small little hints given, like sometimes you see his silhouette, sometimes you hear him speak, and you never see his face, so you're like, oh, who's Kaiser Soze? And one of the first characters that people seem to pin the tail on as to who the identity of Kaiser Soze is one of the main characters, Keaton. I'd also like to say that the poster that I'm using right now is not the one that is regularly used as in for like the DVDs or streaming platforms, but I want to highlight this specific poster and this DVD, which also uses it, is that Keaton is front and center on the DVD. So he's the one that's wearing the brightest clothes. He's wearing a blindingly pair of yellow khakis, a utterly bonkers tie that only Jimmy McGill would think looks good, and a blue shirt. So not only does the film kind of, lead you to believe that he would be Kaiser Soze, but even the poster itself puts him dead center in front of all his other colleagues to make you believe that this man is Kaiser Soze and that you already know what the plot twist is going to be. And the entire events of what happened throughout the film is told through sort of a loose narration by Roger Verbal Kint, which is one of the criminals in the gang who has been captured and is being interrogated by the police. And he basically tells them the entire spin of what happened. And at the end of the film, one of the police officers who is interrogating him, or the main officer who has been interrogating him for the entirety of the film, comes to the conclusion that Keaton is actually Kaiser Soze, to which Roger breaks down in tears and exclaims that he thought that Keaton was his friend and that they were like this. But no. And I should mention that throughout the entire film it is shown that Roger has a limp whenever he walks. And once the interrogation is over, he gets up and leaves, and you get this sort of juxtaposed, like Saw-like scene where the cop is looking at all of the evidence on the walls, and you sort of hear like echoey fragments of what the characters were talking about earlier about how Kaiser Soze could not pull off the ambush by himself, because when the gang eventually do go to the location that Kaiser Soze told them to go to, they get ambushed and they almost all get killed except for Roger. And he sort of pieces it together, and once he realizes it, we get this shot of Roger walking down the street, and you get a close-up of his leg limping, and all of a sudden he readjusts his leg and starts walking like a normal person, to which you realize that the limp was just a act. And then you see, and there was this brilliant moment before where there was this entire scene where Roger was explaining the backstory of Kaiser Soze and how he's this horrible, brutally merciless man who murdered his own family just to prove a point of how awful he was. And he says something along the lines of, I don't remember exactly what he said, but he said something about how cunning he was and how calculative and how nobody's ever seen him, and he's gone like that. That's what he says, something along those lines. And so he calls Kobayashi, who actually turns out to be working for him, because yes, Roger is Kaiser Soze. And one thing I do want to say about this plot twist is that for most plot twists in films, it can be hit or miss. Some of them can be a bit lame. Like I said before, the Saw franchise was known for adding twists out the wazoo in every single film. I'm pretty sure every single film had one twist in it, and that being who the true identity of the killer was. And after a while, plot twists got extremely overdone to the point where most of them weren't even being done in film anymore. Like I said, Saw kind of beat it into the ground. But I do like to say that if you are paying close attention to this film, The twist can actually be quite obvious if you're really paying attention to the film, especially the mannerisms of Roger, aka Kaiser Soze, at the beginning and halfway point of the film. But towards the end, if you were sort of like glazing away from the film and you weren't paying much attention, the twist of Roger actually being Kaiser is quite impactful, I gotta say. I saw this film with my father, and he claimed to have seen the movie before, but he didn't remember it. And the twist also did catch him off guard, which I thought was really nice, to see a film with such a competent and well executed plot twist, because most plot twists can either be so confusing that they're not even like clever or shocking, they're just like worthless, or the plot twist can be so painfully obvious that you spotted it even before you started watching the film. And the film also ends with a reverberation of the famous quote, "The greatest trick that the devil ever pulled was convincing the world that he didn't exist." And the film also ends with Roger once again saying, "And just like that, he's gone." And the way it sort of echoes out into a black screen and then the orchestral music plays with the credits scrolling is actually cleverly haunting. Like, you'll remember that for the next few hours. You'll be like, wow, I can't believe that happened. So all in all, if you're a fan of twist movies like Saw or The Sixth Sense, if you haven't seen this film already, I implore that you should, because this is one of the few films that I've ever seen that actually pulls off a great twist, cleverly executed, well acted twist, and overall is a solid mystery crime film. And I'm giving it a 7 out of 10. That's it.